Howdy friends, Tyler Grant here at JamPlay.com. So great to be back with you, and welcome to the first lesson in a 10-part series on intermediate bluegrass flat picking guitar. Those of you who joined me for the last series, welcome back. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. I would encourage you to check out the archived beginning series that we wrapped up about a month or 2 months ago. That is on the JamPlay archives. We'll be referencing some similar, well, obviously lots of similar material. We will be referencing a few of the same examples, but for the most part, this is going to be all new stuff. And we're going to start today by just reviewing a couple of the rhythm guitar elements of the bluegrass flat picking style. Those of you who know my playing and my instruction, you'll know that the rhythm and the strums and the solid backup guitar is the most important part of this bluegrass style. But we're going to be getting into lots of lead stuff and some exciting hot licks and solos and things like that. Today, let's begin by reviewing the basic boom strum. This is the rhythm for bluegrass, old-time music, and country guitar. And what we do is we play the root note. We're going to start on a C chord, play the root note, and you strum, and then you play the fifth, and you strum. Now this pattern is almost always one string plays the root, and then the next lower string on the same fret would be the fifth. So that works for a C chord. You might see people finger it this way, with both frets covered. That's totally fine. I do that sometimes, but most of the time I do this. I just alternate the third finger. So that pattern works for the C chord, for the F chord. As you see, I'm doing the double fingering on that F chord. That's a standard way to play that, but you could do the same way as we were doing on the C chord there. Basically, this works for any chord where the string, like on a D chord, for example, the D chord is the open D is the root, and that next lowest string is the fifth. So the open D is the root, the A is the fifth. So on the A chord, same deal, the open A string is the root, and the open E string is the fifth. There's a couple exceptions to that. It's always the root and the fifth. As far as the pattern and the easiest way to find it, there's a couple of variations from that rule of just one string lower, like on these chords, and we will get to those in a moment. But let's start with the basic boom strum, and this is going to be the first example, top of the page there, on a C chord. So when you're doing the boom strum, I want to make a note of the picking hand. The boom, the bass note, I like to do a rest stroke when I can. A rest stroke meaning you play the note and follow all the way through so your pick rests on the next string, like so. That gives you a strong, solid bass note. And then the strum itself will be a snappy little snap of the wrist, like so. We're going for a nice, snappy, percussive kind of strum. So here we go. Let's play that first example, and I'll count you in, and just let's repeat that measure several times until we get into that groove. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. One and two and three and four and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 more measures. And stop. Okay, there's the C chord boom strum. Now let's check out the F chord. The F, you got to bar that double string on the top. That's one of those tricky things that gets a lot less tricky the more you play. I remember when that was difficult for me. Nowadays, it's not difficult at all. So if you're still working on your F chord, you know, keep trying it. Sometimes if you capo up to a higher fret, it's easier to grab onto and get used to it. Anyhow, here's the F chord. Now, sometimes, like I said before, you might hold it with the double finger on the bass, the F there and the C below it. I call that the long F, just like I call this the long C. Now I want to make a quick note of how similar the C chord and the F chord are. It's the exact same chord shape, just moved to the next higher string. And the reason we have to bar that is just because of the difference in the tuning of the B string. If the guitar was tuned exactly the same all the way up, we would just move the whole chord up one. But we have to compensate for that high E string and the difference of the E and the B. That's why we need that bar. So, hey, the guitar, you know, most of it's intuitive. Sometimes you just got to learn a chord shape and remember it. But those keys of C and F and the chords of C and F are very, very similar. You see how the C can just fall, my fingers just kind of fall onto the F chord. So I want to just make that note so you'll realize how simple this change is once you really get a grip on your F. Okay, here we go. Let's do the F boom strum. And I'm going to go ahead and hold both fingers down. The pinky on the 3rd fret, 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the A string. So I can just do both of those. I don't know why I do this instead of doing it on the C chord. I just do. I think it's because of this fingering thing. Because as you can see, if you go from C to F, it's easy to just leave that 3rd finger down. So that's probably the reason I do that. Okay, here's an F chord, and I'll count you in, and we'll play some boom strums. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 1 more measure. And stop. Okay. So the song example that we're going to play in this lesson is Old Folks at Home. It's a Stephen Foster song. I'm just mentioning that right now so you know why we're doing these particular chords. We're in the key of C, and the song uses the 1 chord, which is the C, the 4 chord, which is the F, and the 5 chord, which is a G7. So, moving on to the next chord on the boom strum page here, it'll be a G7 chord, and I'm fingering it this way, and this looks kind of like a spread out C. So these 3 chords are so easy to change from one to the other. So from C to F, it's just like collapsing, and then from C to G7, it's like you're retracting. What's the word for that? You're going all your fingers out instead of collapsing. You're expanding. That's the word. Okay, it's just that same fingering as a C chord expanded all fingers out by 1 string. So here's our G7 chord, and this is where the pattern changes because you're playing your low bass note, which is a G, and you don't have a 5th below it. So we have to play the 5th higher. And so the 5th of the G chord is the open D string. So our boom strum on a G would be the low G note with a strum, and then the open D string and a strum. So that's your pattern for a boom strum on any type of open G chord, a regular G major or a G7, which is what we're playing here. The reason it's a G7 is because it's the 5 chord in the key. The 1 chord is the C, the 4 chord is the F, and the 5 chord is your dominant chord, and that is a G7. So that's why we put the 7th on it. It leads very nicely back to the tonic chord, the 1 chord of C. Okay, let's try this G7 boom strum. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. One and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and one more measure and stop. Okay, let's do something fun right now. Let's string all 3 of those chords together. So we'll be playing this example. If you ignore that bar in the middle that's blank, it'll just be each example strung one to the next. So in other words, we'll play 2 measures of a C chord, 2 measures of an F chord, 2 measures of a G7 chord, and then we'll go right back to C. Okay? So let's do this just for fun. String these chords together with a boom strum rhythm, and I'll cue you as we change chords. Here we go. A 1, 2, here's the C, ready, and go, and C, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, here's F, 1, 2, 3, here's the G7, right back to C. As you're working on these rhythms, it's a good idea to practice changing the chords from one to the other. Okay, moving on to the next rhythm pattern there. The boom strum kind of starts evolving. The boom always happens. Most of the time we're playing those alternating bass notes. But what we vary in our rhythm patterns is the strums and the amount of strums that you're playing. In this case, my first variation of the strum, I call it variation number 1, and it's snappy. This is going to be a snappy chord variation. And I call it snappy because you're still accenting the ands. We're still going 1 and 2 and, but this time we're throwing in a little up strum every other time. So walking you through this one beat at a time, it's the boom strum, the boom up strum, boom strum, boom up strum, boom strum, boom up strum. So we're still accenting each upbeat. We're accenting those upbeats like we do in the boom strum, and we're just throwing in that one little up strum for a little bit more of an interesting rhythm. So let's try that together. I'll count you in, and let's just play the C chord with that variation number 1. A 1, 2, ready, and go, and. Now just for a minute, let's all just do this. Just do a dead string rhythm for me. So just lay your hands over the fretboard so we can do a dead string rhythm, and let's just do this. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Just to get your right hand or your picking hand getting into that division of the beat. Because it's just like any strum pattern or any picking pattern. This is the main motion. And any rhythm that you play is going to be just leaving some of those out as ghost strokes. So that particular rhythm goes down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down. 1 and and now back to the full thing. So that's how you can really get into the groove and find out if you're doing the right stroke, whether you're doing a downstroke or an upstroke, because it's always alternating with whatever the main subdivision of the beat is. In this case, it's a 16th note. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So now let's move on to the F chord, exact same rhythm. With that in mind, and you're feeling that swing of the hand, that 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and 4 E and. Okay, so I'll count you in just like that, and we'll play the F chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and 1, 2 and 3, 4. One more measure. Okay, now let's move right on to that next measure, the G7 chord. Same rhythm, let's try that. 1, 2 E and 3 and 4 E and 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and. One more measure. And stop. Okay, moving right on to the busiest strum. This is going to be a full bluegrass shuffle, and this is the next example, variation number 2. And what we got going on here is a boom strum, boom up strum, a boom strum, boom up strum, a boom strum, boom up strum, like so. So this time you're really getting into that dun 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 dun, the swinging of the hand. 1 and 2 and 3, that kind of rhythm. So with the bass notes alternating, it sounds like that. Okay, here we go. Let's play that C chord. A 1, 2, 3, 4, and. One more measure. 1 and 2 E and a 3 and 4 E and a stop. Okay, moving on to the F chord. I'll count you in. 1, 2, ready and go, and 2, 3, 4 E and a 1 and 2 E and a 3 and a 4 E and a 1, 2. One more measure. Okay, moving on to the G7, same rhythm. A 1, 2, 3, 4 E and. 2, 4, 2. One more measure. 2, 3, 4, and stop. that just really makes me want to play a C chord after all that to resolve that. Okay, moving on to the next rhythm, we have the full bluegrass strum. This is variation number 3, I'm calling it, and this is very busy. This is a little too busy to do all the time. This is just something to do every now and then when you need something that's really, really exciting. So part of the strategy to bluegrass guitar rhythm is to change up these patterns. You might do a boom strum for a beat. You might throw in variation 1, variation 2, or variation 3 at any time you see fit in the music. So as we get onto the song example, I'll demonstrate some of that. And it's the kind of thing that if you play these patterns through and you really internalize them and get the technique and the sound together, the more you listen to this style of music and the more you get out and jam with others, the more you're just going to feel that, and you don't even have to think about it much. So that's the goal here, to internalize these rhythms, internalize these techniques, and get out and apply them, and it's amazing how you'll just feel the music kind of flowing through you, and you won't have to think about those particular things. You'll just play by feel and by sound. So let's do this last rhythm, variation number 3, we're calling it. And notice this is going to be using every stroke you got. You got it down to play the strum, and at this point you're not really doing a rest stroke as much. You're doing more of a free stroke so that you can get to the next upbeat, because we got down, up, strum, down, up, strum, down, up, strum, down. Okay, so this is a very busy rhythm using every down and up stroke that you have. So I'll count you in here on the C chord, and why don't we just go through all 3 chord examples without stopping. We'll do 2 measures of C, 2 measures of F, and 2 measures of the G7, and I'll cue you as we go. Here we go, the C chord. 1, 2, nice and slow, ready, and a go, and. One more measure. Here's the F. One more measure. G7. One more measure. Back to C. Okay. So there you go. The last variation here involves something that we do often at the front of a song, at the beginning of a song, or maybe at the beginning of a solo, like a banjo solo, for instance, or a fiddle solo. Oftentimes we want a good strong strum of the entire chord on the downbeat. Instead of starting with just the bass note, we'll start with a full strum and then kind of catch up to the boom strum on the next measure. So this example sounds like this. Let me just play it for you. It goes like this. 2, 3, 4. That kind of thing. I wouldn't necessarily do that 2 measures in a row. This is usually just something you do, like I say, at the top of a section, or maybe at the very top of a song. You hear the banjo come in like, ba-dum-dum-dum-dum. And then you can get, a nice big down strum to open the song with a big full sound, where it might sound a little bit empty if it's just the bass note at the top. So let's just try each example as it's written. Let's do 2 measures of each chord with this strum variation. I'll count you in. Starting on the C. A 1, 2, ready, and go, and. And then here's the F chord. One more time. And then here's the G7. So you see how that kind of stops and starts if you repeat this as a figure over and over again. I would usually just do it at the top of a song. Like here comes the intro of a song, and you might hear some pickup notes by whatever instrument is kicking it off. Kicking off is a term that means a certain instrument will play the melody the first time around to kick off the song. And oftentimes there'll be pickup measures to that. It might go like, and that's the top right there. So I'll just sing it as if it was a banjo or something kicking off the song, and I will start the rhythm and then shift to one of the other patterns. You'll hear how this goes. 1, 2, 3. Ba-dum, dum, dum, dum. And then every now and then, you'll do that down strum. But again, that's something you just got to listen for with players that you like. Listen to Del McCoury, listen to Tony Rice, these kind of really great bluegrass rhythm players to get some of those ideas. And these are things you can practice with your ensemble or with your jam group, and also by playing along with bluegrass albums. Okay, so there we go. There's all, as much as I could condense it onto one page, your most common bluegrass rhythm strum variations. So let's have a look now at the song we're going to use. This is going to be Old Folks at Home. And you're looking at the lead sheet for this song. A lead sheet is just a page that tells you the melody and the chords. So there's no particular arrangement here. It's just showing you how the tune goes, how the song goes. The melody, the changes, and I've written the first couple verses in there so you can get a start on the lyrics. If you want to sing the song, I'd encourage you to do so. The lyrics are available online. We kind of modernize it because this is an old-time song that has some references that you might not be singing the way it was written originally, if you know what I mean. So let us take a look at the chords first, and you'll see that the chord changes are written where the chord is at the top of a measure. Like on the first measure, it's obviously a C chord throughout. The next measure has the C chord for the first 2 beats, and then on the third beat it changes to F. So that's why you'll see some measures where the chord is written above the beat that the chord changes. So this is just a standard notation consideration there. So let's play through the changes, and let's just do a simple boom strum just to get all the way through the chords. Okay? And notice that the A part repeats. So the verse repeats. There's basically 2 verses in a row, and then it goes on to the chorus. So we're going to play it exactly that way, repeating those first 2 systems before we go on to the third system. Okay, so here's our basic boom strum rhythm throughout. A 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the F and the C. Here's the G7. And we'll repeat. Moving on to the next part, G7, or G, and C, F, Okay, now I was trying to play a straight boom strum throughout, but I'm a musician, so I hear things along the way, and I wanted to know if you have noticed a couple of the changes that I made on some of those transitions from one chord to another. Let me show you what I'm saying. If I'm playing a C boom strum, this works. It works all the way through up to the F chord. Then when I play the F, that's what I call doubling up on the fifth. If you get to a chord change, and it happens several times in this song, and we're going to address that on the variations in the next section of this lesson. But when you get to a chord like an F, and you play the fifth, and that is your next root note, I would actually do something to avoid doing that. I would just play the F root note twice, so that C note is fresh on the next measure. That's just kind of a general musical kind of rule of thumb that we follow when we're doing this root fifth rhythm. The bass player might do that, and we as guitar players would kind of try to do that too. If you play like I was playing, trying to keep it totally straight all the way through, and you went from the C up to the F, and you did double up the fifth like I just did, it's fine. It's just one of these kind of stylistic things that I do try to avoid. So this happens on that measure, where I want to play the F note twice and then right back to the C because it's fresh. And then here it is again on the G chord. So same deal, I might just go C, fifth, play the root note one more time so that the G is fresh. And then you're good to go back to the next C chord. And then here's the F chord. Don't double the fifth, play the F again, and then the C, and then the same deal here. And then you can go back to your pattern there. So it happens the same when it goes to the end of the bar, the end of the third system, the end of the second system, where I'd play the C note twice so that G note would be fresh for the G chord. Okay, now that's a bit of an advanced thing, so if you're just getting your root 5 down, don't even worry about that. Get that down and then come back to this later and hear that. And you're going to hear, if you're listening close in the bluegrass music, you're going to hear the bass players using this type of consideration as well as some of the guitar players. Now, if you listen to some of the way back old-timey style of music, they might not care about this at all. But it's something that I care about. It's something that I notice, so I try to not double up the fifth. Okay, and that's just something, again, you're going to get a feel for. It's not really worth writing in an example just for that one little thing. But just listen for that and think about it, and you're going to start probably hearing that same thing as you work through the boom strum in these chord changes. And like I said, we're going to address that further with some other ideas in this next section we're going to get to in a minute. But let's come back to this lead sheet just so we can learn the melody, because I also want you to get started on this melody, because we're going to be using this melody in subsequent lessons for lead playing, soloing, and working up some solo kind of guitar arrangements with it. So it goes like this. Let's go ahead and play that together. The first measure is just, next measure, Swanee River, old folks at home. You probably know this tune. I'm just going to play it. I'm going to play it nice and slow and let you kind of play along. I'm going to repeat the A part as we did when we strummed it. So it'll be played exactly as written, and then I'll move on to the B part, and I'll just play it all the way through rather than coach you through it note by note. Because I trust that you can either read that tablature or just come back to this lesson once it's archived and kind of play through it a few times. So here it goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. third system. And two, three, four. Okay, there's the melody. Why don't I just sing it through once, just so you can hear it all in context, and then we'll move on to the next section. Okay, so here you go for your reference. Feel free to strum along if you're feeling it, or just sit and listen. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Way down upon the Swanee River, far, far away, there's where my heart is turning ever, there's where the old folks stay. All up and down the whole creation, sadly I roam, still longing for the old plantation and for the old folks at home. All the world is sad and dreary everywhere I roam. Oh, brother, how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home. There you go. So get that song in your head. That's one thing I want you to do this coming week, is like sing that melody in your head and try to memorize it. Try to memorize how to play it on the guitar. Try to memorize how those chords go with it. And if you're a singer, and even if you're like today, I had a big festival last week and my voice is shot. So you could probably sing it better than I could today. But if you are a singer, by all means, and even if you're an aspiring singer or someone who wants to be a singer, give it a go. It's fun to sing these songs. I like to sit and sing these kind of songs every day. That's what I like to do. Okay, let's have a look at the next page. And this is going to be some bass note variations for this song, The Old Folks at Home. So, what we have here is the strum is going to be the boom strum throughout this example, just so you can focus on the bass notes themselves and how we move up or down from one chord to another. Most of the variations in this arrangement are based on passing bass notes. For instance, one of the first variations we see is going from a C chord to the F chord, where we go use those. Those are just notes of a C major scale. We are in the key of C, so most of the time those notes work just fine for transitioning from a C up to an F, from an F down to a C, from a C down to a G. Those are just the notes going up and down a C major scale. So there's going to be some of that in this example, and there's also going to be every now and then maybe a chromatic note, like that's one way we lead from an F chord to a G chord. If that's our F bass note, I'll go chromatically up half steps from the F to the G. So those kind of things, again, are just moves that you're going to get a feel for And you're going to really start hearing them the more you play through this type of example and the more you listen to bluegrass guitar and just go out and see bluegrass concerts or hang out at the jam sessions. You'll see players doing these kind of moves. So I'll play you through this exact example as written, and then I'll come back and address a couple of spots that we might need to address that might be tricky. But I'm just going to go ahead and play straight through this. Read along, play along if you're good at reading, and then we'll come back and address it one piece at a time. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Moving on. Now, if you followed that repeat, it would just take you back to the top of the song, to the beginning, but we don't need to play it all the way through. Again, let's address this one little piece at a time. So in the very beginning, what we have are just 3 pickup notes to the tonic note. So what's happening is we're going and just resolving to the C note for the C chord. So incidentally, we're playing the 5th note of the scale, 6th, 7th, and the root. Now, just in one more brief primer, I've covered this in every single lesson I've done for JamPlay, the live series and my flat picking series that's online. Your major scale, I use the number system. So your root note is 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and then descending. 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's how most people analyze the scale today. We don't use the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do so much anymore. We use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. It's a lot easier to memorize. So this beginning lick is 5, 6, 7, 1. I mean, how many times have you heard that? That's in a lot of music, not just in bluegrass or country or old-time guitar. Okay, so that's how it starts. Your most basic little pickup notes. Try it with me. 1, 2, 3. Then let's go to that first measure, boom strum. One more boom strum, and then that's a shortened version of that figure. We don't always have time to do the entire, because that first note of it takes the space of a strum. So sometimes we'll do that abbreviated version of it, where you strum and then go start on the 6th instead of the 5th. So you have it gives you it gives you something you can do in a shorter amount of time and with less forethought. Okay, so there's the first measure, and then the second measure, it's a boom strum on a C, and then you got that exact same move, but targeting the F note. So it's an open D, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, which is the 6, 7, 1 of the F chord. So the exact same move, it's just a walk up that uses the major scale. And here's one of these examples, like I mentioned before, where you don't want to double up the 5th. You don't want to double the 5th because by doubling it, I mean you don't want it to anticipate that note being the root note of the next measure. So instead, I pick a different chord tone. I play the root of the F chord. Now I could have just played that again, like we did in our basic example, before going to C, but this time I'm going to play the root and then the 3rd. So that's the 2nd fret there, the fretted 3rd string of your F chord. Okay, that is the 3rd of the chord. Remember, all major triads go root, 3rd, 5th. 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. So when we go 1, 5 like that, we can also go up to the 3rd. So that's what we're doing there in that second measure. So let's play everything up to that from the very beginning. Very beginning, and then the first 2 measures. A 1, 2, 3. So notice that when you go that high, all it leaves you is those 2 upper treble strings to strum. That's totally fine. I like to have the bass note kind of move around. You know, it's nice to, you don't have to keep them all low notes. You can go up high every now and then. But then we jump right back down to our low C note, and then the 5th. So we're looking at the 3rd, the last measure of that first system now. It's just a C, root, 5th, and now this is, now what's that all about? Playing your low E under a C chord? Well, sure, you can do that because why? There's your root, there's your 5th, and what is the low E? That's the 3rd. It's the 3rd of your C chord. So I'm using that as a nice way to transition to the next chord coming up, which is a G7. So if I play those 3 bass notes of that measure, the root, the 5th, the low 3rd, 1 more strum, and now I'll walk up chromatic from there, 1st fret, 2nd fret to the 3rd fret. And that lands me on my G note for the G7 chord. Okay, so listen to how that sounds if I play those 2 measures together. That's a really nice bass movement. So try that with me. We're going to play the 3rd measure, which is the last measure of the first system, and move on to the following measures. So the C chord onto the G chord. Here we go. Here's the C. 1, 2, ready, go. Let's do that one more time. I'm going to slow it down a little bit and make sure everyone gets it. Those same 2 measures. Ready, and a go, and. Moving on to the next measure, which is a C chord, and all I'm doing is I'm going root, 5th, then there's that low E again, right back to the 5th. So that's a neat thing to do. If you're strumming multiple measures of C, you could do that over and over again, like so. But that just happens because I wanted to show you something different that you could do other than your regular old root 5th. Okay, so that measure happens, And then the measure after that, the third measure of the second system. This is that measure where the C chord happens for 2 beats, and then you switch to an F chord. And this time, instead of our standard F, I'm going to use an F bar chord. Ooh, don't be scared. You can do it. So I got a C strum, the 5th. I'm going to walk down chromatic that time, and that lands me on that low F note. Now the reason I'm playing an F bar chord is simply because I want to play that low F note. Notice that without that, it's your regular long F. So the only reason I'm barring that whole thing is so I can hear that low F note, because that's just where my ears were leading me. I was hearing it going bum, 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 bum. It's nice to have that low F note in there. So make sure you practice up on your bar chords. I'm sure there are many resources here on JamPlay to help you with your bar chords if you don't know them. But that is a standard F bar chord. Sometimes you'll call this an E-shaped bar chord because it's just an E chord moved up a fret, so you have to bar it. And again, depending on where you're at with your level, I mean, bar chords might seem hard. It was hard for me once. But once you get it down, it's quite easy. So there it is. That's the only reason I'm playing this bar chord. It's not just because I want to play a bar chord. It's because I want that low F note, and that's the only way I'm going to get it. Okay? So, listen now, clean. Beautiful that sounds. You all can do that at home. So let's play those 2 measures. It's going to be the third measure going right to the next measure after it. Yeah, just play along and read it along with me. Here we go. Ready and go and C. Walk down to the low F. Then a C. Open A. Low G. Okay, so right after that F chord, now you'll notice I played that F root note twice. Why? Well, because I didn't want to double up the 5th. Because if I had played the 5th, it would be that same note at the top of the C chord measure. So I opted for the easiest way out, which is just to play that F bass note twice. Then the next measure, you got a C and a strum. And this open A string is simply a nice little walking bass note down to the low G. And then that's my regular root 5 on the G7. And then I'm right back to a regular C boom strum. And then it repeats to the top. And you do that whole thing again. So why don't we try that entire A part together? I'll count you in nice and slow, and let's give it a go. A 1, 2, 3. Okay, now that first ending, the one with the 1 and the line across, that takes you back to the beginning, to the start of that repeat. Then when you play the whole thing and you repeat it, the next time you skip that first ending and you go to the second ending, which begins the same, but this time the bass notes will walk you down to the G chord. Okay? So there you are at that point. The bass notes will go down the scale And now that's the low G note, and then this second fret of the A string, that's the third, and the open D string, of course, is the fifth. So on that G7, I'm doing a neat little thing. I'm just arpeggiating the chord. Root, third, fifth. Then using our standard walk up to get back to the C. Okay, and then I'm on a C chord. And that third on the next one. So it's a regular root, fifth, root, third. And why am I playing that third? Because it leads very nicely up to the F chord. It's just a note that's right under the root note of the F chord. So that's why I did that. That measure sounds like this. And it's a standard F chord measure where I double the F note to keep that next C note fresh. Then I use that little walk down to the G7. Okay? So let's play it from that first G7, the third measure of the third system. And let's play those 4 measures from there. 1, 2, ready, go, and... Now we're on a C chord, and I'm doing a root, and a third, and a high fifth. That open G, it's the fifth, it's just higher up. Because I wanted to do that same move like I did with the G7, where I arpeggiate the chord. Then I do the standard walk up to F, double that F bass note, and then a C. And now this is the low third going to the G, the fifth, back to C. I just like how that sounds. And I'll hear that in my head. I'll hear it go, bom, 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 bom. All these bass note variations are things that I hear. If I'm singing a song in my head, I hear the bass part. You know, if I'm out there on a hike, sometimes I'll practice this. I'll just kind of walk and I'll sing those bass notes through a song like this. You know, bum, 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 bum. You know, you'll hear those little melodies in the bass, and it's just a really, really neat way to improve your bluegrass rhythm guitar playing and keep it more interesting. So let me just play that whole entire B section for you from the G7 chord on to the end, just so you can hear that example one more time. Feel free to play along. I'll count you in. 1, 2, ready, go, and... Missed it. I did the A instead of the low E. Either one of those moves works. The C, A, that's what I did on the A part. But this time I meant to go. Okay, now we're just about done here, but real briefly I'm going to address something where you can put all of these elements together to make a good, strong rhythm presence of this whole song. So I'll play that whole example of the bass note variations, But as I'm going, I'm going to change up the strum. You're going to hear a few of these different strum patterns over that. So this would be like your next move, your advanced move. Once you learn these bass note variations, you can start changing up the strum as well. So I'm just going to play this song for you. I'm going to try to keep all those same bass notes exactly as written, but I am a musician and I might play one of them a little different if I hear it that way. And I'll just try to change up the rhythm and do this as if I was performing. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Way down upon the Swanee River, far, far away, there's where my heart is turning ever. There's where the old folks stay. All up and down this whole creation, sadly I roam, still longing for the old plantation and for the old folks at home. All the world is sad and dreary everywhere I roam. Oh, brother, how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home. So I'm not really looking at the page, so once I got into that, I started just coming up with my own variations. But the process there, I hope you can see, is something that's very intuitive for the bluegrass guitar player. And once you learn these examples, that's the goal, is to just internalize them and start to just feel those variations and hear them. So that leads us to your assignment for the week. What we're going to do is work through all of those examples, the strum patterns, the lead sheet. I want you to learn that song in the key of C, and also to learn all those bass note variations, and start to try to internalize them, sing them as you go. And then I also want you to try to apply some of these principles to another song of your choice. If you have another bluegrass song in your repertoire, or a country song, or anything that fits that similar type of rhythm, I'd like you to go ahead and try to apply all of these techniques to that song. And just take this and run with it, because it's really fun stuff. So now we'll open it to questions, if anyone has any questions.
We do have a single question that's come in here. This is from Lethalee61, and they asked, when beginning bluegrass, is it best to get strumming up to speed before tackling solos?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't think it's necessary to be able to play rhythm very fast. I think you should do them both kind of concurrently, and that's how this lesson series is set up. We're going to get to some lead playing pretty soon, maybe even next week. Let me have a look at the syllabus. Yeah, next week we're going to do a lead break for Swanee River, for Old Folks at Home, this same song. So I think they kind of both go hand in hand as far as, I think you're talking about tempo, as far as getting it up to speed. One really helps the other. So I just say take it at a nice, easy pace, no matter what you're doing, and we're going to get you some lead stuff to play along with this rhythm stuff. And then we'll start kind of slowly clicking up the metronome with both of those elements, and you'll see that they really do kind of go hand in hand.
All right, there's no other questions at this time. We'll give you guys about 30 seconds, a minute or so, if you have any questions, to get them in. While you're doing that, maybe you can go through that bass variations one more time real quick.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to any questions that might come in. And if not, we'll wrap it up for the week and see you guys again next week.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Way down upon the Swanee River, far, far away, there's where my heart is turning ever. There's where the old plantation, sadly I roam, still longing for the old plantation and for the old folks at home. All the world is sad and dreary everywhere I roam. Oh, brother, how my heart grows weary, far from the old folks at home. Haha, that time I was looking at it, so I did get every single bass note as written. Use that for an example if you're playing along.
All right, we do have a couple other questions that have come in. I haven't had time to actually put them into the system here yet. The first one is just a simple, what is the beat per minute for this?
Yeah, well, 1, 2, 3. We've been varying the tempo. This doesn't necessarily apply to this lesson, but that where I was just playing might be something like 80 beats per minute. I'm just totally guessing, but that's probably about right. The performance tempo of the song, way, yeah, I'd say that's probably about 80 to 85 beats per minute. That would be the performance tempo.
All right, and we did have a question. This is from John Daigle. He's on the live stream side right now. He's asking, all the melody notes are at least eighths, but the rhythm is still played as though there are underlying sixteenths?
Indeed. The bluegrass rhythm, the divisions of the beat rhythmically are usually busier than the divisions of the melody note. So what I mean is you'll have long melody notes that happen over a busy strum. This is a very, very common thing in this type of music. So yeah, the melody is very simple rhythmically. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and the rhythm will have some 16th notes in it where the melody does not. That is quite a common thing. And it's just kind of the way this music goes. If you're playing the basic boom strum, however, it's the same. That's all divided into eighth notes, and there's nothing more than that. But what I'm encouraging you to do is to keep the rhythm a little bit more exciting by throwing in a couple of those 16th note up strums to help kind of push it along. There's a thing that a lot of bluegrass bands do today where they might take like a pop song or an 80s song or something. This is kind of a gimmicky thing, but it's something that happens a lot. And they'll make a bluegrass version of it. So, listen for some of these things. There's there's even stuff like, these Pickin' On albums, like Pickin' On the Grateful Dead or Pickin' On Metallica or something, where they'll play their songs, but put this really fast, really busy bluegrass rhythm under it. So it's interesting to hear a bluegrass version of a song that wasn't originally a bluegrass song, because then you'll hear how, it's just the same melody, same length of the notes, but the rhythm under it got much, much busier and much more subdivided.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have for right now. Tyler, a couple people are saying thanks in the chat and really enjoyed the session.
All right.
So we'll go ahead and wrap up. This first session, as with all of our sessions, will be archived both on the JamPlay site and then as well as on live stream as well. For sessions going forward, they'll be archived on the JamPlay site only. So if you are not a JamPlay member, pick up a membership. That way you get the full archive here, and then you do also get the downloadable content, which is the jam track that goes along with this, all of the notation, PDF. We even provide the guitar profiles. So there is a little bit more that you get. Thanks everybody for joining us, and I'll have Tyler play us out here.
Thanks so much, friends. Good to get this lesson series started. We'll be back next week at 4 o'clock Mountain. That would be 6 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time next Tuesday. Thanks so much.